Hi everyone, if you're watching a recording, do fast forward just a couple minutes. I'm way behind today. We're just getting ready to get started on Castellated bezels. I'm going to finish setting up this camera real quick. I have a second camera today, and we'll see whether or not we can get that working properly, which apparently I cannot seem to get it there. Okay. Let's see, do it like that. Okay. Oh, I hope everybody had a nice weekend. Are we up and running, honey? Let's check. I think we're up and running. Okay. So it sounds like we are up and running. We are on 4 channels today, broadcasting on YouTube, Facebook, my personal Facebook, Q Talk on Facebook, and also on Twitch. Let's get going. So we're starting something new again. Another new start. So we finished up with the Stone and Stone. Phew! I said I'd never do it again, but if you're following me on Facebook, you'll know that I did it again, and it turned out really nicely. So I'm a little surprised. And why am I actually going to do it again is because one of the facilities that I'm contracted with contacted me. They saw the post and said, "Hey, why aren't you teaching that at our facility?" So it is earmarked for May, and we're going to go hybrid with that. So if you really want to get in depth with it and do the Stone and Stone and get a kit to do it and follow along step by step, you can do that in May. Watch the Q Talk Facebook page, and I will definitely post it there, and we will, we'll make an announcement for everybody. But again, it's going to go hybrid, which means you can tune in from wherever you are and also do the class with us. Okay, so apparently Twitch continues to be problematic. I'm really sorry. I just I had not found the time to figure out or fix Twitch, but it is definitely a platform issue. Okay, so that said, what are castellated bezels? Well, castellated bezels are, in my opinion, simply gallery wire, but I'm going to call it masculine gallery wire because it's not as frou-frou as most gallery wire, and it's a lot more, well, as much as we can say it's contemporary, it's not, because it's actually really traditional in that you see it a lot in the Southwest jewelry, right? In like American Indian, Native American Indian jewelry. So I don't know if you can really call it modern, but it's a little bit more streamlined. How's that? And less frou-frou. That said, a few months ago, I was sent a jig, a castellated bezel jig called the Bezel Ease, and you can get it at bezelease.com. And this person came to me via referral, and they said, maybe you should send one to her and see what she thinks. With full disclosure, I told him, the gentleman, his name is Dennis, and I said, I've never done a castellated bezel before. And so, but I think it might be fun to go ahead and try it live and show and work through the process and show everybody how it's done, or maybe how it's done, because again, I've not done it before, so we're just gonna be fluid about it. And then I thought about it some more. I did a little lookup to see, is this really an original idea? Is it an original tool, or is it something that's already been out there? Is somebody reinventing the wheel type thing? And what I found out was that yes, apparently there is another jig out there. This one is called Bezels. I didn't even know. Okay. Oh, top jaws. I did not. That's sort of funny. I did not even look up how to do any of these. I just know that they're out there, and this one comes with 2, I guess you can say dividers. I don't know. I guess you can also call them a jig that you would use to help you make the bezel. Okay. So let me tell you who this is from, because I don't even remember, but I have it written down, and it is, again, you can find it on Etsy, and it is Jim Brandvik. Okay, apparently he's been making these for a really long time, and it's fairly popular. But fair word of warning here on both of these. They are both a little bit on the expensive side. At least for me. I find any tool really that's above 50 bucks or even above 30 is a little bit expensive. So I believe this one is about 100 and the Bezel Ease is about 130. So let's just sort of go through it and show you what they look like. Okay. So this one, well, both of them, you'll need a vise to go with it. And this one came with 2 jigs like so, that you put your bezel inside and you clamp it into your vise and then you would saw into it. And it comes with, and I apologize, I did not look up the name, the official name for these markers that they have. And you can see, you see that? There's a tiny little notch. And each notch makes a wider, how do I put this? A wider marker? Okay, so that you can space your cuts evenly. And of course, there's 1, 2, and then there's this other one in here making 3, 4 different widths that you can use to create your marks. That'll make more sense here when I show you. Okay, that said, the Bezels, and this was, by the way, I didn't buy this. This was sent to me by a girlfriend who happened, she's a total tool whore. I know you're watching, but anyway, I asked her to send it to me so that I can play around with it. But it's coming back to you next week, just to let you know. So you don't have to be without it forever. So this one came in a nice little molded box, and it had an Allen wrench that was in there, and a really nice book with instructions and all these parts and pieces, which I will show you what they are here in a second. So that's sort of the slight difference, as you can see already, that these pieces are, or I'm sorry, these the tools are quite different from one another. It's a different approach. Okay, so what you have on this one is basically it is a jig, right? And you can see all of the slits on that side and on that side. So one is wider apart than the other one. So now you have 2 choices as to how far apart your slits will be for your castellated bezel. So that's one major difference between the two, because this one gives you 4 options, right? So which is sort of nice. If you were doing this without the jigs and without these tools, you would literally have to sit here with a marker and mark all your slits so you know exactly where to go, which makes it a little bit cumbersome and perhaps not as even as you want it to be. Okay, so that said, this also came with 2 what do you call this, wedges, so that you put your piece in, you put your bezel in between the slits. Okay, and why were there 2? One was 20 gauge and one was 16 gauge. Well, right there, I have a problem with this already. Okay, I have not done a ton of research, but what I did was over the weekend, I posted a question on one of the metalsmithing groups, and I said, hey, doing my first castellated bezel, what do you recommend as to thickness of the bezel? And unanimously, everybody came in and said 18 gauge, 18 gauge, 18 gauge. I'm like, oh, okay, I have 18 gauge. I can strip some of that and I can use some of it. So here this morning, as I'm opening up the package, what I find is they gave you one for 16 and one for 20. Whoops. So something is awry. That for me is already my first complaint, considering that all these people came in and said 18 gauge is the way to go. I thought it was just sort of interesting. Okay, so Andy says there's a comment. So Kathy out there agrees with me that doing this without a jig is really tedious because she uses a scribe and a compass. So again, you know, if you don't want to spend the money, it depends on how many of these you're going to make. I mean, seriously, if you're going to spend $100 to $130, you gotta make this, I'm gonna say 30 to 40 times to make it worth your time. I mean, if you only do it twice, it costs you $50 each time right there just for the tool to make a ring, which is probably gonna cost more than the materials that you just put into a ring, even at the woohoo high cost of silver right now, as silver is going up. But anyway, so then on here, so then the other thing you had to do on this one before you got started was to take out a size 3 saw blade and run your saw blade through all of these slits to get them going, okay? Because they were cut a little bit too small, not quite wide enough. So I've been spending the last half hour putting all those slits in. I'm shy a couple, but that's okay. I'm going to leave it there. I see that there's a suggestion out there to make a shim, 18 gauge shim. Here's the problem. I thought about that, right? So the problem is, had I thought about that earlier, I only thought about that about 10 minutes ago when I discovered that their shims were only 20 and 16 gauge, was, oh yeah, you know, I've got 18 gauge here, I can cut it, but I did not. I have to drill the holes too in addition to it. Just saying. Okay, but maybe, hold on. Maybe you don't need the holes. Let me think about this for half a second. Let's see. How do we want to do this? Yeah, you know, it's going to take a bit more thought than just to throw in some 18 gauge in here and to see that it would work. But we're going to go with this and see what happens. Again, this was just a big experiment, right? To play with it, see where it goes, and see if we can make this happen and learn a little bit. Share what we learn, just a little bit along the way. Hello, Mr. Robert Lopez. I haven't heard from you in a while. I just had to get a shout out to Robert. Anyway, okay. So there it is. But you know what? I find that interesting. This was listed as 20 gauge, but yet this is my 18 gauge, and it fits. So what can I say? I don't know what to say about that other than it fits. So yes, Robert, I know it's easy. I have to go out and get use a clamp and drill straight through the shim is what he said, by the way. Put a piece of 18 in there. Yes, I know, but then I gotta go get a freaking drill bit that's as big as this. I'm just saying. And then somebody else said to tape it in place. That's actually a good idea too. But the whole point of this right now is to make sure that you see that the depth is correct. I'm just gonna go with this because it actually fits. What is listed, like I said, as 20 gauge fits my 18 gauge. So we're just going to go with this, okay? Don't be lazy. Well, Robert said, don't be lazy, Q. And let me just say that if you've been following along, you already know I am that lazy person, okay? So we're just going to go with it. Okay, there. So there's this one. Let's see, how do I want to approach this? Let me do this, okay? 18 on top of the screws. Anyway, okay. So I already had a ring shank literally just sitting on my bench. We're going to use that. This is going to be my back plate at some point. I've got some 18 gauge copper here that we can screw around with to see how this works. This is going to be my stone. It is copper malachite. So those dark veins that you see in there is actually copper. So it will polish up and be really nice and shiny, which is so cool. Okay, and I've already cut a piece of sterling silver, which frankly I'm off slightly, so I'm going to have to saw that too. So before I do anything, I'm going to switch out and I am going to at least saw my bezel straight. I'm going to switch out cameras here in just a second so you can see what's going on. And I'm going to saw my bezel straight before I start. Again, I don't even know the verbiage on this. Before I start castellating the bezel, is that how you say it? I don't know. So Robert says, ooh, my camera just died. Okay, hold on. Robert says that he loves me and that he's just messing with me. I know you're just messing with me, Robert. I will never forgive you for my phone. That's why I know you're messing with me. Okay. Okay, let's see. The camera has now decided to be funky. Okay, so Robert said he thinks that they made it with the 20 gauge because it'll clamp fine on the 18, just because you have the ledge. They're just making it so that you have a ledge to hold it. Could be. But the reality is, what's interesting here is, if I'm telling you, if I pull out the 20 gauge, it's not going to clamp tight because look, the 18 can slide right in there, and this thing is closed. So I'm going to, for that first point here that we're making, I'm going to say it's slightly a foul, right? But, and you know, this is an honest review. I'm going to put it out there. No one is paying me to do this review. I'm doing this because I don't know, because I can, because it's just sort of fun to play with a new tool. So what I'm doing first is I'm going to straighten out my bezel. You can already see it's a little wider up here than it is down here, because apparently Q didn't cut it straight enough when she put it on her guillotine. So because it is too little to take off, I am just going to saw it. I'm sorry? So we're just going to take off this tiny little slither, and I'm not using my bezel shears because it is 18 gauge wire. I'm sorry, 18 gauge sheet, and it's a little bit hard to take off so little. So it's a little bit easier for me just to follow my line and to use a saw. So, you know, here begs the question. Maybe Robert will answer this if he's still watching. So, Robert, do you use a jig? And if so, which jig do you use? We'll wait for his answer. Yeah. Okay. Oh. I'm sorry? Is that what Robert said? Robert, I don't think that makes sense. You said you might make one today and see what's what? What does that mean? Oh, so Robert's an eyeballer. Okay, so you, someone who can relate with me, because if you've been following along, you know how much I like to eyeball things too. But I also truly believe that eyeballing is a skill that can be developed over time. So it takes practice, but I think it's good to train yourself to be able to eyeball a lot of this that we, a lot of the things that we do. It makes it, it makes actually, once you learn how to eyeball things, it's just a little bit more efficient in work, right? He said he might make a jig. I'm sorry? Oh, there's a lot of chatter from Robert out there. You guys should just, you know, follow along. Ha ha. Chirp, chirp, Robert. Okay, so I apologize for those who are on YouTube. I'm assuming Robert's watching on Facebook and that you don't see the chirping that Bob is doing. Ooh. Sorry, just dropped everything here. Okay. I dropped my phone. I dropped my piece. All right, so this is straightened out. I still have a warp in it a little bit from cutting, but we'll straighten that out here in a minute. Okay. So Robert contends that eyeballing allows it to look more handmade and organic. Sure, that works. If that's what you like, you know, as opposed to machine, you know me, I like it a little bit more on the perfect side. But again, not necessarily that I would honestly spend this much money for a jig, but that's me, and if you've been following along, you already know I'm cheap. Okay, so that said, let's go ahead and put our vise on, wherever that vise might be, and see. Okay. There we go. Wait, what happened here? I must have knocked something out. Oops. Something happened here. But anyway, I have no idea. So weird. Okay. Oops, I know what happened. Ah, there we go. Okay, sorry. So let's try it. I'm going to put this one in first and see how this goes. And I'll do it in copper. I have a feeling that the Bezels is going to be the one that I go with, that is going to make life the easiest, okay? Let's go out a little bit. And I had some copper that I had cut. And let's see if that works in here. It seems to be sitting on a ledge, a tiny, can you see that? There's a tiny little ledge in there. Okay. And what you're supposed to do is, well, how do you do this? Ah, I see. Can you see that? I don't think you can see that. Let me turn this a little bit more towards, oops, wrong adjustment. Let's turn it this way. This might make more sense. Obviously my bezel is not cut straight, but that's okay. It's just copper, it's just a test. So I'm gonna put in my first cut, and I'm using a 3, right? And we're just gonna saw it right down, like so. And you're supposed to take this and, well, maybe did I do that backwards? Ah, I did do it backwards. We'll start from over here. And you're supposed to, I read in the instructions, you're supposed to count how many times you stroke it, but what if you only stroke it really small on one and then really long on another? But I guess this is you having to be careful about how you want to do this. Okay. Maybe we keep it organic like Robert says. And then so you see the notch, you're supposed to put the notch in here. And you're supposed to use it as a guide. And that's basically what that is. Tighten this up some more. So Bill says he likes the bezel ease. I'm assuming, Bill, you got one? Hi, Bill. So, I don't know. I don't know if I love it. It works. It makes sense. When I saw it for the first time, I was like, oh, it makes sense. But if you don't use, okay, so let's just say on this one, if I was using a smaller saw blade, I'm using a 3, right? If I was using a smaller saw blade, this wouldn't work because this slit is too wide. It barely fits in there now. Okay. So Bill says you still have to count your strokes, but I contend your strokes, what if on one round, right, like here, if I went from front to back, right, and then on the next one, I didn't go as far, which means it's going to be off regardless. So I would think that you would have to make a line, that you would want to make a line along your bezel, and so that you have another guide. Because do you really want to be sawing into this? On this one, I don't think it's steel. I think it's aluminum. So it's going to be really easy for you to cut right in there. But I get this weird feeling that my friend put this in, she put this piece of cardboard in here. And I get this feeling that you're supposed to put this cardboard in here and splay it out so that you don't ruin your jig. I don't know, but that would make sense, that you put like a piece of cardboard or maybe a piece of plastic that splays out on both sides so that when you cut into that instead of into the jig. Okay, that is basically an assumption I'm making. Okay, so first of all, the advantage of this one that's different from the other one is that you've got 4 different widths for your slits, 4 jigs for your slits. Okay, that's nice. The disadvantage is the cutting, and you might be cutting or sawing into the jig unless you put something in there. At least if I was to spend that kind of money, I would be a little bit retentive about this, and I would want to protect my tool because I would want it to have it for a lot longer. Okay, let's try this one. Okay, we're gonna go with this. Okay, let's go up a little bit. And let's put this guy in here. Because the reality is, actually I think this one is 20 gauge, so you can see how loose it really is in here. That's a little, I don't know how that makes me feel. Actually, I'll do a smaller one. Better. Yeah. So here, I feel like it's off before I do anything. I feel like these slits are not matching up. Maybe I have it in backwards. Let's flip this around. Maybe. Let's see. Another thing too is depending on the depth of your bezel. I think they did it so that you can flip this either way. Let's see. I'll show you what I mean. They did. Okay, so you can see, I'll show you after I get this on. So you can see how the inside would have the bezel up higher or lower depending on how wide of a width you want on that bezel. Okay, so I had I did. It was slightly off because I had my my jig screwed in the wrong way. So that's another thing, by the way, Dennis, if you're watching, is I would mark it so that people knew right away how the pieces should face, out or in. So on this one, obviously, you want your logo to be on the outside, but on the back one, it doesn't really tell you. So now that I did that, I am definitely on. Oops, I'm much more straight than I was before. But there's a problem. Okay, so you see that? There's a wiggle. I personally would want this to be a lot more, I would have no wiggle at all. And you would think that having the two screws, there would not be a wiggle issue if you had that loose. That's a very slight misstep there. We're going to go ahead and stick this in. Okay. And so with this one, supposedly, you can just go and saw right to those slits. I didn't tighten that up properly. Okay, that was my bad. Okay, so I would want this to be a little tighter without having to put a shim in it. I get where the 18 gauge would work here, but the 20 to the 20 gauge, it's too loose. It is definitely too loose. And yeah, for sure that is 20 gauge. So I don't know what happened there. Let me see. I'm going to look at the instructions really quick. So, I got the instructions. Am I missing something? Should this not be really straightforward? Let's see. Once your first set of cuts are complete, you may need to reposition the bezel. Okay, I get that. But are we sitting this on top of? Okay, so here's a question. If Bill, if you're still watching out there, okay. So the question is this bezel right here supposed to be above, or is it supposed to be inside and flush? I cannot imagine that it should be inside and flush because there's so little room in there, right? So that's another thing that's a little, I don't know how I feel about this. Yeah. Who said that? So Robert, that's exactly what I'm contending. I would have liked to have started this inside so that you get it down, right, to there, and then it should be perfect, then you don't have to count your strokes. That makes sense to me. Well, let's turn it around and see. Let's see what we got. So this one, as you can see, is quite deep. That is, I'm guessing, let me grab my caliper. I'm guessing that's like 8 millimeters wide. Okay, so I'm gonna measure this real quick here. Huh! Yep, that's about 8. Yep, which is a lot, which means it's more than a 1/4 inch. Really, do we make bezels that are taller than a 1/4 inch? Not really. Hold on. Say again. Yeah, so we're back to eyeballing. Robert made a comment that you should eyeball till you get to the lines. Well, you know, the thing is, if we're gonna have a jig, I don't want to eyeball anything. Okay, so here, did you see how big that piece of bezel was? Actually, you probably didn't. I didn't show you. Let me show you. Open this up a little bit. Okay, you see how big that was? It's huge. It is about 7 millimeters, 8 millimeters. Okay, so we're gonna put this back in, just so you guys can see it. And we're gonna do what Robert and I think it should be doing. I'm gonna slide it in. Okay, can you see that? No, you guys can't see it, but you can see here from this side that I'm in and I'm only about 1/2 millimeter below the top, okay? So if this is to work the way Robert and I think it should work, we would do it this way. Aha. Nope. This cannot be it. And I'm going to show you why here in a second. Because these cuts here are not deep enough. They are simply not deep enough. Okay. And even if you, yeah, can you see? Oops. Where am I? There it is. Can you see that? Can we focus, please? There we go. Yeah, it's like 1 millimeter because it's down too far. But even if I brought it up, that's only 1/2 millimeter. So we're talking about maybe 1.5 millimeters worth of cut, which is really not enough. So it does have to sit above to make this happen. I'm gonna look at this again. Yeah, because you can see that these slits are not enough to make this happen. So we're back to this one more time. This was the first one. Where's my other bezel? And this was the next one that we did. Well, I don't know. This review is turning into something I didn't expect it to be because, you know, frankly, I looked at this and I was like, clearly this is going to be the winner. I mean, I thought for sure this was going to be the winner because it looks so well designed. It feels really good. It came in a great packaging. There was a lot of great instruction, but in practicality and in theory also, looking at this in theory, it seems like it should have been the clear winner. And I don't know. Okay, so let's move on. Okay. Yes. Okay, so I'm going to move on. I'm going to go ahead and take this out, and I'm going to put in my my 18 gauge. Okay, so Robert, I don't think I understand what you're trying to say to me, quite frankly. I'm going to have Andy read that to me one more time. Yeah, I don't think that's going to work either, what Robert's saying, but I still am having a hard time understanding what that is. Okay, I think I need to read Robert's comment, okay? I'm going to get on Facebook really quick, and I want to read this comment from Robert because I'm not no offense, I'm not really understanding what you're saying. Try this. Bezel above what? Start the blade in the groove or notch, but kick your saw at a step angle to get it in the groove and touching the bezel. Okay. So with the bezel above the tool, I think is what you're saying, start with the blade in the groove. Oh, like so, right? Is that what you're saying? In the groove. Yeah. Wait, I see. Wait. So your blade is in the guide and touching the bezel. Steep. Uh-huh. So, yeah. So I see what you're saying. And then, okay. I think this is what he's saying. Uh-huh. And then we bring it back. We're going to go with that. Okay, so this is what you mean, right? Is go at it at an angle. Did I put my saw blade in? Oh, okay. Just making sure that I put my saw blade in the right way. You know, it's been known to happen. Okay, I think the reason why you're saying to do it this way is to ensure that I'm in each one of these slits, making it even, right? I believe that's the whole point here. Okay. Uh-huh. Okay. I get where you're going with this. It makes sense what you're saying. So I'm going to go ahead and keep working through this. Okay, so there's a part of me. Just say that again. Just to start cut so that they're not eyeball. I get it. Yes. I got that. Okay. I'm actually going to pull this out. Go with it and see if I feel any better. I mean, it's already in here, so let's try it. Let's just try it. Okay. This one, are you the same? Yeah. Tightening up my vise here. No apologies, Robert. This is good. I'm glad. I'm glad you're here. Okay. Did I screw that up? I think I screwed that up. Ooh, yeah, I did. But that's okay. You know what? As I'm going back and forth between using this and using this jig, I'm finding that, you know what, there's some shortcomings to both of them. I think it boils down to, frankly, what's your budget, and you know, what does your budget look like, and what you are willing to pay for, right? And how functional is this? I don't know. I'm still playing with it here. So, okay, so Robert, since you make a lot of these, let me ask you this. How deep should that cut be? Should it be halfway down your bezel? I never bothered to look that up. Okay, so I can already tell you I sort of screwed this up, but I'm going to fix this. In that when I moved over to the other jig, it made it slightly off, which is okay. So we're just gonna move this down a little bit. Oops. And get things to line up again. There we go. So that's another thing that I, again, having never done this before, I don't know. How deep should this be? Okay, so the official answer there, Robert says 1/2 to 1/3, depending on depth of sewn. Fair. So I like the idea, by the way, of starting at a steep angle with the blade in the groove and then bringing it back. Uh-huh. Okay, so there's a question, and maybe this goes to Robert. I don't know, considering I've never done this before. The question is, do any of the vendors sell a castellated bezel wire? Okay, so Robert, if you happen to know, if you can post that on your comments, that would be great. I'm sorry, what did Steve say? Aren't there two depths, top to bottom and outside to inside? On the jig, I'm going to say no. So it is just, oh yeah, I suppose. If you're saying the depth inside the groove here is what you're talking about, right? Let me see if I get that to focus. Okay, so yes, I suppose that depth is part of it, and going into the inside of that groove is yet another thing. Okay. Okay, so here's what else has happened, okay? I'm looking over this. Remember how I said it was slightly, like, off? As I'm sawing this, it's slightly off again. I don't know if you can see that. Let me see if I can adjust my camera so you can see that. Yes, like I said, this is not... there was another comment about the expense of these tools. This tool is not for the faint-hearted. Your pocketbook's going to feel okay. Oh, the wire. Oh, the wire. I'm sorry. So Deb, Marcy just posted that she found this on the castellated bezel on Etsy, and it is quite expensive. Okay, so do you see? I don't know if you can see that, but these grooves are now slightly off. They're not matching up again. So that's a problem. Okay. So Robert contends that he does his after it has been shaped, and I've always thought about, because he wants the cuts to line up at the solder joint. Okay, I would agree that is that would be my thing. Okay, so you can see here I'm not very even. You can see where I sort of screwed up here when I switched over on the tools. That's fine, but even here, whoops, I'm going to have to go back and do something about that. Not that I really know what I'm going to do. I might not even finish this project. You know, it was just a big experiment. Let's see. But again, can you see this? There is wiggle back and forth. And it would seem that even if I get it in incredibly tight, it loosens up. It loosened up. Okay. I'm sorry, honey. Okay. So I'm going to tighten that up again. See if I can get some of this to line up. So I want to fix this. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, let's take a look. I'm going back and I'm going to fix. I'm putting my eye here. You see that? I'm putting my eye down here so I can see how far I've gone down. But you know, that's not a great place to go either. I'm going to try that again. Yes, that is the problem with gallery wire too. So this is, again, in essence, this is gallery wire. And getting those ends together is always a challenge. We'll approach that once we actually get this thing cut. Okay, so yet another problem. Okay, I'm again, this is full disclosure and this is just raw. This is a raw review. We're not editing this. We are not making this any prettier for the sake of, shall we say, television, the internet, or the vendors, because this is not a advertorial by any means. This was just trying to see if this works. Okay, so hello Canada. So the other thing here, okay, I know what I did wrong. I know that I'm rushing through this for the sake of this demo, but you know what happened, can you see that? Can you guys see that? I'm not sawing straight. What the heck do you do once you do that? You know, I'm sawing at an angle. Little did I know I was sawing at an angle until I took it out, and then it's like, oh. So I think it would have been best if, again, back to the argument that both Robert and I made, was that if the bezel sat inside and flush, then you can definitely get this to saw much straighter, because you can see my lines over here are at a slight angle this way, whereas it is straighter on this side. And this is, you know, this is also sort of typical in that when you get tired, then you stop paying attention. And how many slits have we already done? 20. I got tired, and that's what this is. So Deb says, if this makes it easier, what was a harder way? That's my contention with this whole thing. Was like, you know, how would you have done this otherwise, you know? Okay, you know what? I actually think I'm going to let this go. I'm going to go back to how one would do it manually. So Robert said this would probably work great if the shim was slightly shorter. By the way, Robert, I'm repeating all your questions because we're on 4 channels and not everybody can see your comments. So don't think I'm just sitting out here parroting everybody. Just saying. So what I understand, or okay, not what I understand. If I was to do this, if I was making an assumption as to how to do this, this is how I would have done it. I would have put it in a vise, like so. I would have marked all of these, and I would have just gone through and sawed it. Just like so. And I'm just going back on my saw marks, right? And that's where I was like, oh, I feel like going back to this thing would have made it easier. So we're sort of back to this jig, right? This jig seemed to have held it really nicely. There was very little wiggle. I'm going to actually try it again here. Okay. And you know what I'm going to do too is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to score a line for myself here so that I know where it should be, because I did not take the time to do that. I wasn't thinking. I was thinking the jig was going to do it for me. Why wouldn't the jig do that for me? I just, not that I paid for any of it, but if I had just paid for it, I sort of wanted to do the dishes too. Just saying. Okay. Is that right? I'm just scoring it on the side here. FYI. Okay. So we'll put it back in here. And again, not feeling particularly comfortable about cutting into my girlfriend's jig. So I'm going to do it this way. I hope this is the reason why she gave me this piece of cardboard. No, the cardboard wouldn't work either to protect the jig, because you need that little ledge. If I put the cardboard in here, let's turn this to the side so you can see what I'm talking about. If I put this piece of cardboard in here to protect can you see that? Can you see that little tiny ledge inside? Okay, so if I was to put this in here, what I was thinking to protect it was I was going to do this. And then I was going to put my metal inside. But if I do that, that ledge goes away and nothing's going to hold my my bezel. So I'm going to try. Sorry, friend. I'm going to try to do this. Okay, so the question is this aluminum? I believe it is aluminum. So I'm going to try to cut these slits that I already have in there without cutting into the jig. Ugh. You know what? I'm going to get another saw blade too. I broke this one. I want a longer saw blade. Let's try to make sure the saw blade's going in the right direction too while we're at it. Unlike what we did a couple weeks ago. Just saying. Okay. So I'm gonna give this another try and see if I can at least, what do we call this? What do we call these little slits? Just slits, right? I'm gonna see if I can get the slits done today and see where we go with that. A little bit of cut lube. Get my eyes down there. Well, I'm glad you are into this, Robert. I've caught your eye. Oops. Tell your wife I said hello, by the way. Okay, well, that fell out. Let me try that again. So not as tight as I thought it would be. So that was a good suggestion. Kathy suggested that maybe we can just blue tape here so that you can see when it scuffs the tape and know when to stop so you don't ruin the jig. That's not a bad idea. So I'm just going in and I'm going to just try to make these slits even. So as you can see, it's only taking a couple extra strokes. as you can tell, I'm not really good about counting my strokes. Well, partly too, because I'm just talking through this process. I can't talk and count at the same time, I'm just saying. And additionally, remember, I'm using a 3/0, not 3/0, a number 3 saw blade, which is always going to make it a little bit harder to saw, right? But according to the instructions, you should be using a 2 or a 3. If I was using a 2/0, I am sure it would be a lot easier. Okay, so just fine tuning a couple of slits. Okay, so clearly my friend hasn't used this very much, because I did make a few scuffs along the way. Nothing in the middle. Phew. Okay, I hate borrowing tools for that reason. Okay, so here is what it looks like. You can see my score mark. I did meet all of my little score, my score all the way down, so it is even though frankly I'm standing here looking at this going, God, that is not even. But according to my score, it is even, okay? So that's where we're going to end this today. Hold on, I'm going to switch out cameras really quickly. Okay, so this is where I'm going to end. Let's review this for a second. Get my head back together. So this one by, can't remember his name again. Let me look it up. What is this guy's name? This guy is, Jim Brandvik. Okay, so this one is from Jim Brandvik, and I was sent these two pieces here. Not completely sure. I think it's just for thickness of metal that you have 2 different jigs. I should probably go look on his YouTube for instructions, huh? But there's also these 2 hand pieces that gives the different widths on the slits. So you have 4 different sizes on here, which is sort of cool. Okay. I'm going to say this one with the vise is going to be a bit easier, a little bit less taxing. There's still some inherent issues with this in that, you know, you're going to cut into this tool. It is, I really think it's aluminum. I could, you know, if you're watching, reach out to me and I will make the correction next week when we come back to it. But I really think it is aluminum, and that is sort of makes it hard. But I also understand why you do it that way. Okay. Yeah. There was another comment of, you know, Kathy says she wonders if you can use a finer blade and then go back with a larger blade. You know, that's not a bad idea. I didn't see anybody doing that. So the bezel ease comes with, as you can see, the screws, 2 shims, a 16 and an 8 and a 20 gauge. We had ascertained that the 20 gauge, even though most people use 18 gauge, you can use a 20 gauge to as a shim for your 18 gauge, that it would still clamp in. But the problem with this one is 20 gauge, the 20 gauge sheet was really loose in there. And that for us was a little bit problematic. Additionally, you know, for this, it was loose. And those of you who know me know that I'm a fairly strong person, right? So tightening this should not have been a problem. But yet it loosened up as I was going, and therefore I lost my mark along the way. And it didn't allow the bezel to be held in really tight, which makes it a bit different from this one. But this one, if you don't tighten your vise properly, it's not going to tighten for you either. So perhaps Mr. Lopez, if he's still watching, might be able to come up with yet another jig. widget that will make this better. I don't know. But I'm sort of in the realm of maybe just do this by hand and do and just score it, and put it on your vise and just saw it. Again, Robert says that he would make his bezel first, so let's just pretend this is a bezel. So he would make his bezel first, come in and make the slits. That way, you don't have to worry about where you're soldering, and it would be exact. Depends on how you do your work, but that is a way to go. And frankly, for me, I've thought about it that way, but it's problematic when you're doing, say, a really, really small bezel, like let's just say a 10 millimeter bezel. How do you saw all those slits in there and not hit the other side? With a stone this big, I can see how that works. But again, haven't done it, so I don't know. So Robert says he's working on another jig, so maybe we could be on the lookout for that. And hey, if you make another jig, Robert, and you want me to show it to everybody, send it up. But it might just blow up and I might not like it either. So I don't know, maybe you might want to do that, maybe you don't want to do that. But anyway, well, I'm glad I hope you guys got some information out of this. And it wasn't, like I said, it was a surprise. It's not where I thought this was going to go. I thought for sure it's going to be really smooth and I'm going to jump right into it and it would be really great. But I didn't. That said, on Monday, let's let me think, what's going on? On Wednesday, it's UFO, and then on Thursday, oh, that's right, on Thursday, we're going to do the glider Zoom. If you're registered for that, you'll be getting the Zoom link today. And then on Monday, we have Deb Perry with PMC. She's one of our virtually overcrafting instructors. She's going to come on Monday and do a guest instructor spot for me while I'm out of town, and then I'll be back the following Wednesday. Maybe on Wednesday we'll do a little bit more work on this. I haven't decided yet, and then we'll continue to work on this. I am going to finish this project. I am going to make a castellated bezel. It's just a matter of time, and then I'll show you how we process through that, and we'll learn whether or not we like it, and maybe you'll send me some tips. So stay tuned. Thank you so much for everybody. Are there any more comments? So someone also suggests that you make your saw cuts, say that again, after I've made my bezel. Oh, after you've measured your bezel and soldered close. So that was the tip. Okay, so thanks again for all the comments. Thanks for hanging in there. Robert, sorry I destroyed your workday, but it was fun and really appreciate the input, and everybody else who gave us some input here. It was enlightening. I learned a lot, and we'll be back. Have a great week. I'll see you on